Oh, you're an anonymous narwhal.
And what?
Bloop boop boo. Bloop doop doo. Bloop doop da boo.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. My name's Michael, and I'm joined today by my friend Michael. Michael is an artist and has helped me with a few of the thumbnails on this channel before. And Michael's thoughts made it into one of our old videos, our Media in 1985 video, since Michael knew all those movies better than the rest of us did. But this is Michael's first time on the channel, so I thought maybe you'd like to introduce yourself, Michael. So what do you do?
I am an art professor. I teach both foundations and illustration online, and I am a comic book colorist. So somebody sends out the scripts, which I'm actually transitioning into writing now, but somebody sends out those scripts, somebody draws it, and then I get everything in Photoshop and add color, special effects, and things like that. I've worked for all the major US publishers. Most recently did some stuff for Marvel.
And just so people can get to know you better, what is a favorite video game or video game franchise of yours?
Tears of the Kingdom's probably been my all-time favorite game, but I'm a huge Pokemon fanatic, so I play Pokemon Go daily. I love Sword and Shield, Arceus, everything that's on the Switch, but I also go back to the old games on my 3DS.
What's your favorite design of a Pokemon?
Oh, that's hard. That's really, really hard.
Or pick one of your top 10, maybe.
Uh, well, I always think Lugia is really cool because it's got the bird elements, but it's not just a bird like a lot of the starter ones are. And then Mew and Mewtwo have always been favorites just for the nostalgia purposes.
What's your favorite video game console?
I'd probably say Wii, actually, which is
Oh, interesting.
weird because, yeah, it's one that I played so much when it first came out. I fell off over time like anybody, but I think I played Wii bowling more than any game I've ever played in my life.
And just to get some music in here too, who is a favorite band or artist, or what's a favorite album of yours?
Well, you know I love Taylor Swift, so I think every album of hers is great, but I also like bands like Rah Rah Riot, and I like Trent Reznor's soundtrack work, so I'm all over the place.
And we bonded over our mutual love of Tori Amos
Yes.
early in our friendship. In this video, I'm going to ask artist Michael to take a look at the character designs from Final Fantasy VII and just give some general thoughts, see what Michael can come up with or what he knows about the character based on their design. So Michael has not played Final Fantasy VII, doesn't really know a ton about it. We've talked about Cloud because Cloud is very recognizable. So this is the first Final Fantasy game that Amano did not do the character designs for. This is the first one that Tetsuya Nomura did all of the designs for. They're going to look a little different than what you're used to, since we also both love Amano's art and share things back and forth with each other when we find something cool. But let's just dive in to Final Fantasy VII character designs. Actually, while we're on this first screen, what do you think about the logo? So Amano
Uh,
did do this logo.
it's really kind of rasterized, so I didn't expect it to be his art. I don't know what it's actually supposed to represent other than like maybe a planet.
It's a meteor. All of these Final Fantasy VII logos that Amano does are either a character or sort of a disambiguation of something about the game, and this meteor becomes important later in the game. Okay, what is jumping out at you about this character?
Immediately, it's the chunky boots and anime face. So there's an artist in comic books named Humberto Ramos who does Spider-Man very often for Marvel. Feet tend to be oversized, his eyes are oversized, but then other proportions are pretty much in line with what you would think a character would be.
So I think the bigger eyes just comes from general like anime aesthetic, but Nomura's designs do tend to have characters with really big shoes and or feet. If you think of like Kingdom Hearts, he designed all
Right.
those characters.
Oh, well, that makes a lot of sense then to me, because yeah, that I get that vibe for sure.
Yeah.
Her palette's really analogous, you know, the pink dress, the red on there, and then people tend to say that brown is a yellow, which it can be, but if you push it more towards warm, I'd say that it fits this analogous scheme here.
What
Does
do
she
you...
have flowers in her hair? I can't really tell from the
it's
front
a
view.
ribbon. It's a ribbon.
Okay.
But flowers are an important motif for her, actually. What would you guess this character is like?
I'm guessing she's maybe one of the agile-based characters, like faster than normal. And I would say like ranged because the bow, that definitely gives her that length requirement to hit from afar.
So she is actually the most magically inclined character. Her physical attack doesn't really do very much damage, so you're pretty much always going to be casting magic with her when you have the opportunity to do so.
So is she a magician?
In this game, the roles for different characters are not as well defined. Every character can take on any class if you build them correctly, but her natural stats have the highest in magic.
And magic, does it have a system in this game? Is it based in lore of any kind?
Go back to that title card. So that little circle above the meteor, above the T of fantasy, is what's called materia, and that is crystallized life stream. And so the life stream is very much like a reincarnation type idea. When you die, your soul leaves and becomes part of the life stream, and when something else living grows, its soul comes out of the life stream. But it's also like a physical stream that goes underneath the earth. But sometimes some of that stream will like seep out in like a fountain and create these little crystals called materia, and the characters can equip this materia onto their weapon or their accessories, which are usually bracelets, that can teach them magic then. A lot of the lore is based on the earth and the spirit of the earth. And that particular materia that you see there is the one that belongs to this character in the next slide.
I'm guessing immediately he's a bruiser class of some kind. Definitely the huge shoes again. I like the arm here with the Gatling gun, I guess, attached to it. So I guess he's both like a beat 'em up, but also ranged with his gun of material.
Yeah, so he is a ranged character, but also a tank. Most of his weapons are guns. He can switch that arm out with other arms, but there are a couple that are just like bludgeons that he hits people with.
Now, is he coded to be straight up Americanized from the army look of him?
This game, all of the characters, well, most of the characters feel more or less American. A large portion of this game takes place in one city where the poor people live on the ground and the middle class or above people live on this plate that is suspended by these big pillars above the poor people in the slums. And the company that basically runs this city, which even has its own military essentially, is incredibly wealthy and powerful, and they got this power by creating electricity by sucking the life stream's energy out of the earth. So it's very much a fossil fuel connection. What do you think his personality is like?
I'm guessing from the thing where it's definitely got that eye arch like that he's one of those gruff people, got an attitude over nothing kind of look to him.
So this character is Barret. He's one of the heroes. He is the leader of an eco-terrorist organization.
Does his tattoo mean anything in the game, or is it just purely aesthetic?
It's just aesthetic. It's just to show that he's a tough guy.
Yeah, it's really cool though for a design to, have that depth in it.
I used to not really like Nomura's designs that much, largely because they were not Amano's designs. But the more I think about them and look at his other designs, I think he does add a lot of cool things.
I believe it was Frank Miller, Sin City and all of those things. Whenever he was returning to Batman for the first time in forever and was discussing his approach to The Dark Knight Returns 2, it was like the sequel to that famous comic. He talked about how he wanted every person, no matter who it was, whether it was Wonder Woman, Lois Lane, or whatever, to have their own hairstyle, so that not only whenever you make a silhouette does that person have bouncy curls or straight hair or bob cut, whatever, it said something about their personality. And definitely I'm seeing just from scanning the little pictures and then seeing the bigger ones up like this one, it gives you that instant recognition that, he's got that buzz cut, the army influence. Her hair was more flowy, and so I'm guessing that plays into her personality some too. This one's so crazy. This is bonkers because the first two are like, these realistic human people. I mean, they have some exaggeration, but overall they're, proportionate. And then this is just like a cartoon strip come to life.
What do you think this character's personality is like?
So is it one person or is it
Okay, I'll give it a little bit away. The character is actually the cat on top.
Okay. And then the blob underneath is kind of its vehicle?
We'll get to that in a second, but yes.
Well, then I'm guessing that kind of outrageous, anime, loud sidekick. I'm thinking of Team Rocket's Meowth a bit.
That's pretty much it. This character is a robot. The cat is actually a robot that is remote controlled by some bureaucrat back in the city while they go on adventures. The party doesn't know this until way later, but the big white thing is also a robot, but it's a strange depiction of a typical Final Fantasy creature character called a Moogle. They're usually little white cats with wings that walk on their hind legs, and they usually have a little dangly orb from their forehead.
Okay. I think I've seen the original ones before then. This is very distorted though.
Yeah. But these are both robots. The cat is remote controlled, and the cat robot controls the Moogle robot.
So then, speaking of you've got magic, you've got a guy with a Gatling gun arm, you've got robots. I'm guessing this is somewhat dystopian?
Yes. This game came out in 1997, and it feels pretty much like it could be 1997 in many ways. It's not a real 1997. It feels like it's trying to be contemporary for that time in many ways.
The weirdest thing about this design, though, is the bottom half of this character. The leg on the left is in a totally different space than the one on the right. That one protrudes and pushes out into the side, and the other one goes actually with the form of the body. It's like, I don't know, distorting perspective and space.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what ballet position that is, with one leg turned out and the other one straight. Anyone who knows ballet, let me know in the comments. But you're right about this character being kind of outrageous and obnoxious. Each of these characters has special skills that they do. The first character, all of hers are about magic. They're magic based. The second character, all of them are based on his gun. This guy, his special skills are all based on gambling. You meet him in a casino. You find out later that he's spying on you and giving info to the bad guys, but then he has a change of heart and helps the good guys out.
Does the cape and the crown, he's grandiose too in his personality, I assume?
Yeah. He's full of himself and obnoxious.
What's his name?
Cait Sith, which is based on I think it's Scottish, maybe it's Irish, folk tale of Cait Sith. It's spelled C-A-I-T space S-I-T-H. But Cait Sith is how you would pronounce it in whatever language that is. And I think it's a cat that eats naughty children or something like that, like many folk tales are. They really just took the name and that it's a cat.
I've never seen this one ever before in any iteration. I feel like the first two I've seen possibly in fan art with Cloud, but this guy, never seen before. He's much more proportionate than all of the characters. He doesn't really have that big of boots. Those look pretty normal for the size he is. Again, I assume ranged from that long spear. I assume, again, some type of soldier who's a bit gruff just for the frowny lines again, and that comic book sneer with his mouth.
So this is Cid, and every Final Fantasy game from 2 on has a character named Cid. Sometimes they're heroes, sometimes they're villains, sometimes they're just NPCs. This is one of the heroes. In many of the Final Fantasies, each Cid has to do with aviation in some way. This guy is a pilot.
So why does he have a spear?
That's just his weapon. The closest class for him, like all of his special moves, are what in the Final Fantasy series they call Dragoon moves. So he jumps in the air really high and then lands on you with the spear. The connection to the spear is probably because of Dragoon, and Dragoon is because aviation, I guess.
So Amano often did with his thing would be, instead of both of the arms being the same exact thing, there would be one that was more like this, like he's got right now, and then one that was more short so that you had that asymmetry and gave you a little bit more play in the design.
Yeah,
but
that's
I'm
interesting.
seeing a lot of symmetry in the things that you have here. The only thing that's been kind of asymmetrical is putting that gun on the guy's hand, but otherwise, like, the characters are sticking to that symmetry.
I think that's also part of why I, at least initially, well, I still do prefer Amano's designs, but Nomura's designs mostly look like they could be streetwear or slightly adapted streetwear. So I think that's just sort of Nomura's less fanciful taste with this stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, even with something simple like the goggles on his head, Amano would maybe do like one color eye different or something that would give it that little bit of twist.
Oh, and this guy's kind of an asshole. He's gruff, he's mean. The guy with the gun arm, Barret, he is also a little bit of an asshole, but he's like a softie at heart. Cid is just almost irredeemable in this version of the game. I think in the remake that they're working on now, that they have 2 of the 3 games out for, I think he's softened a little bit, so he's more likable. But I don't know, I kind of like that he's not super likable in this game.
We gotta make everybody likable, else you can't sell their action figure.
Hey, are you enjoying this video? If so, please give this video a like. Subscribe if you aren't subscribed already. We make reviews of media, especially video games and music, but sometimes TV and movies too. If you're only interested in the video game content or the music content, check out our playlists where all of that is all together. That's it, so let's get back to the video. You know this one.
Yeah, I know Cloud, you know, a twink with a big sword. See, though, he does have the asymmetry. He's got only one shoulder pad and the kind of gauntlet accessory to his glove here, where I don't think it is on this side. This side, it looks just like a normal glove. And just having a big sword is going to give you some asymmetry because of the weight that wherever you hold it, it's going to lean you that way or the other.
The sword doesn't seem to weigh anything in how his model is designed in the game. They do a better job of giving the sword some weight in later properties in this world.
Well, I kind of mean more design weight. So like if you have one heavy thing on one side, you tend to do a bunch of little things on the other side to offset it so that the weight is distributed and you're equal. You're not falling one way or the other.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then with this though, you get that play of diagonal here, or if he's holding it outwards, diagonal that way.
And then what about his hair?
His hair is ridiculous. It reminds me of the Yu-Gi-Oh character, the main character in Yu-Gi-Oh.
I think I read something at one point where they were talking about how he designed this character, and he was basically going like, well, he has to have protagonist hair.
Since I've seen a couple now, it is a prototypical American idealized blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy.
That sort of plays into his character. Like, he looks like the perfect soldier boy. A lot of people bought this game because it had Cloud with his big sword on the cover of the game, and people are like, this looks interesting, let's try it, because, you know, they wanted the macho power fantasy of it. But I think, especially in the past 10 years or so, the general population of people who love this game are moving away from the power fantasy ideas and seeing that he's actually a really complicated character who quite literally doesn't know who he is. He went through some trauma and basically had his personality erased and developed his own personality. A lot of the things that happened in his past that he tells people are things that actually happened to someone else, and he doesn't know that. And a lot of the leading up to the climax of the game is him basically like piecing back together his real personality. You calling out the like perfect blonde-haired, blue-eyed look is an interesting counterpoint to that's not really who he is.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That like gives him a lot of depth because I know the few people I've talked to about the games have disliked him just because he became a poster child where people thought he was in other games because he was so ubiquitous in the marketing. I think it almost became like a Pikachu scenario where it's like, even though it's a great design and so iconic, you almost start to hate it because you see it everywhere whenever somebody says Final Fantasy.
He actually is in a few other games, and not just Final Fantasy games. There's a fighting game that has him and one or two other characters from this game in it that Square made. Final Fantasy VII stuff was kind of everywhere, but it was really the first game that Square made that really took off in the West. So they were pushing it real hard.
Now, did he ever make it to like Soul Calibur since he has a big ass sword?
I don't think he's in a Soul Calibur.
Oh, that's like the biggest missed opportunity.
Yeah.
He'd be great in Smash Brothers too.
He might be in Smash.
This one's crazy. This is like a rejected Pokemon that kind of tribal tattoos from 1990, and wow, there's a lot going on here. Well, first of all, it's very highly saturated red, which kind of goes against all the other designs I've seen. There's more of a neutral, earthy kind of palette. The girl had the red analogous scheme, but it was still based in muted versions of that. This is in your face, as red as it can be, and then has some of the elements, like I was saying, with asymmetry, like his eye is messed up, and it has the complement of green, so it like pulls your eye to his eye, but then the very strongest contrast is on his tail to show, I guess, that he's got some kind of fire powers. This is a wacky design though, because there's like Aztec-y bracelets, there's tribal tattoos, there's Native American head referenced into both the feathers, the tendrils that come down, and the way that they have the spiky hair going back. What is it?
So this character's name is Red. Well, that's not really his name. So all of those are tattoos except for that Roman numeral 13. That is a brand. He got branded with that. He is the last of his race, highly intelligent. I think they say in the game that he's 47 years old, but in his race, he's basically a teenager. He is very much Native American coded, and so is the town that he comes from. The brand, that 13 brand, he was abducted and experimented on, and he was given the name Red 13 as his specimen name. The people who captured him didn't even know he could talk.
His face has that look of Scar from Lion King, but then his body is almost hyena-like in the proportions and shape. So is it supposed to be more lion? Is it supposed to be ambiguous in terms of body?
I think it's supposed to be sort of ambiguous. In the game, I tend to read him more as a dog, but in this art, it looks more cat-like, more lion-like to me.
Does anyone ride him?
No, he's too proud for that. I kind of like the colored pencil looking coloring on him though.
Yeah, the only thing is there's light going down here, and then there's light coming up here, and then nothing's except this section is affected by the light on his tail.
Yeah.
It's kind of all over.
Yeah.
But I love the textures, both like you're saying here and in Cloud's sword. I'm guessing they are using like a mix of markers, pencils, and different stuff to get that. Now, this one looks like straight out of manga that I've read, and I can't remember. It's like Tokyo something, where they're kind of gangsters. So that's like the vibe I'm getting from his suit with the gloves, with the shotgun immediately. I assume he's somewhat of a badass with the scar on his face. The white, I guess, could be coded as like, you know, that hero thing, but then with the shades of black in it too, that might just be a subterfuge, I guess, for the type of character he is.
Yeah, he's definitely a villain.
I hate his brown shoes with this outfit though. Like, how much more classy would it be with black or white shoes? He's a straight up villain.
He is the son of the president of the company, of the energy company. And when his dad is assassinated, he takes over. He's just such a shit. spoiled rich kid with too much power.
And he can shoot a shotgun with one hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the all-white outfit, or mostly white outfit, is mostly meant to look sinister in this case.
Yeah.
Although it's a little bit of a shame when you see the polygon version of his character, that long coat over his pants ends up making it look like he's wearing big white puffy snow pants.
Well, that's what I was thinking at first until I noticed the buttons and the openings on the left going down. I thought it was just like really stylized pants, and then I was like, oh, he's got two coats on.
Yeah.
He must get chilly.
The same problem happens with the first character we looked at in the pink dress. Because of the way that slit works in her dress, the polygon just makes it look like she's wearing big pink snow pants. But yeah, this guy's an asshole.
Okay, now I've seen him before, but I never knew he was in this series. I don't know his name, but I would say out of all the ones that we've gone through so far, this is definitely the strongest design. Whenever you do character design, you want to think of how you're going to focus your attention and the different aspects of the details that bring you to that place. So even though you have these cuffs that are right below the knee on the leg and the cuffs that are on the wrists, they're still in the same tonal range. But then you pull the eye up with this contrasted shoulder pads. And of course, the only real pop of color is in the eyes. There's some on the tips of the sword and in his hair, but that's a complement to the strongest color of his eyes. In terms of pure design, this one really grabs you right away. The sword has that thing that leads your eye into the design. There's not asymmetry, but there is with the opening of his jacket here, so that gives you a chance to play around with it, even though he's mostly symmetrical. I'm assuming he's either like an anti-hero or the main villain, just because he has that badass look and the same kind of bangs that you were talking about with the cloud.
He is the main villain. This is Sephiroth. He doesn't really show a lot of emotion. He's very cold and calculating. He was one of the top soldiers in that energy company's military, but then he turned against them and basically wants to destroy the planet by calling a meteor to hit it, which is what the Logo meteor is all about. This is cold, calculating main antagonist of the game.
Does his emblem mean anything? The one that's right in the center of his sternum?
I don't recognize it myself. There's probably somebody who knows Final Fantasy VII lore way more than I do who does know that. So if you do, comment below.
Does he have magic, or is it all based on his sword and skills with that?
He's like the perfect soldier. He's got extreme strength and great magic.
No, she just feels completely out of place compared to the other ones. It's almost like a roller derby vibe that you get from her instead of military. Everybody else is fairly covered up because I'm guessing, battles and stuff like that. And she's got some of that up top, but her entire legs being exposed, both arms, it's kind of a little bit of a disconnect. I think it's really cool design. I like all of the aspects. I think it has a good balance of weight, because whenever you do something like the exposed legs, it catches your eye a lot because there's that big empty space, but then you put all this chunky stuff on the other parts, so it draws your eye to those areas as well. It pulls you all around the character instead of just focusing on the red dog thing. You focus on that color for a while, and then you can get into the details. Here, it pulls you all the way through her body up and down.
What do you think about her proportions?
The legs are super long compared to her. Where you typically see the pelvis hits, you go up for a wrist, and here you're getting that much lower down. So all of her limbs are very long, and then her torso's very, very short compared to the rest of her body. And of course, the big boots. What class is she?
She is a fighter, like a monk, like a martial artist type. She's fast and she just punches and kicks.
Is there a connection to anybody else, or she just joins the group?
She is Cloud's childhood best friend, and she owns the bar where the eco-terrorist hideout is, and she's also one of them.
They always seem to own a bar. I don't know how that works into Japanese culture, but very often. It's like a bartender slash fighter.
Her hair is supposed to look like a dolphin tail. Some of her like special fighting attacks are dolphin based, which I never really completely understood why. So she is the one who brings Cloud in to work with the eco-terrorists. He's hired as a mercenary for them. When he starts telling everybody all these things that happened to him in his past, she actually knows that it's not true, but she doesn't speak up about it. She doesn't know what happened to him, but she's like, why is he lying about all this stuff or misremembering all this stuff? Their hometown burned down sometime in the past, and he gets a lot of the details wrong, or like knows things about things that happened when he wasn't there because they're someone else's memories. She's a really like cool and complex character. I've always thought it's almost kind of a shame that she's just so sexed up in her design.
Yeah, proportionally where her skirt ends is very precarious for her.
Especially if someone who's kicking a lot.
Exactly. Oh, wow. Again, I can see elements of the same designer, but this doesn't feel like it continues with the game. This almost seems piratey, like cyber pirate more than post-apocalyptic design. Is there any like pirate kind of element to him?
No.
No, okay. So he's just I guess a bad guy with this mechanical arm and this harness. I assume that he's bad based on those kind of things and the red eyes.
He is sort of Hot Topic goth coded, but he is a good guy.
This is a good guy.
Yeah.
Wow. I would put him with the other one, the Sephiroth that you told me about. His design is like very closed in and not bondage, but you know, those tight elements that cinch him at the waist and stuff like that. So I would think that that coding would go to maybe a second in command or something like that.
He used to work for the bad guys, but called them out on some bad stuff and then was shot, revived, and experimented upon, and now he's essentially undead. A lot of his stuff is very vampire coded in his story, and like you actually find him in a coffin, but he otherwise is not a vampire, but he is much older than he looks.
He's almost Bucky Winter Soldier kind of feel to it.
Yeah, it is kind of that. But he can transform into like different beasts to attack the bad guys. And is always strictly a good guy, but it's largely because of his vendetta against the people who messed him up. The other part of the backstory is that Sephiroth's actual human mother, not the alien that he thinks is his mother, and this character, Vincent, were lovers. She was a scientist and worked for the bad guy scientist who is experimenting on everyone and also experimented on him. The bad guy scientist and Sephiroth's mother gave birth to Sephiroth, but he was experimented on in the womb. And Vincent's like, that shit ain't right. And so they shot him and experimented on him too.
Well, I like that he can turn into things and attack, but yet he still needs like a Glock to finish somebody off.
He can't do it very often. That's his limit break. He has to either attack or be attacked a certain number of times before that can happen.
I guess like you were saying though, I was seeing piratey with the boots, but I could see that Castlevania type throwback on that part of his design.
I think that's more the intention. And I think the claw is there just to be like, I'm not completely human.
Okay, and then we just have like a 10-year-old who's got a star that they throw, I assume. Is that supposed to be a leg brace or just the weirdest leg accessory ever? And then the arm. This is wacky. This looks like a literal fantasy game where you're playing, a ranger or something, but it then has the oversized tennis shoes and leg warmers. This one's all over the place.
She is the youngest of the characters. You got that. I think she's supposed to be like 15, 16 or something like that. She's a ninja.
No.
We talked about how most of the game sort of feels like it's taking place in America somewhere. She is from the most obviously Japanese place of the game. That place lost a war against the power company, and her whole character motivation is to help her home be built back up to its former self.
It is a lot in terms of design. Whenever you create a lot of characters for one story, you tend to need to have variety. So I would say this designer pushes more towards their own stylized thing, like this character and the one that you said had the dolphin hair have a lot of similar proportions and stuff. But whenever you have a large cast, you kind of want to have almost, if you think of the X-Men, you have the normal people like Cyclops and Jean Grey, who are the idealized shapes and stuff. And then you start to branch out where Wolverine's really short, Beast is bulky and large. You have different kids that are on the team, like Jubilee's very small kid, and so on and so on. But here, a lot of everybody's grabbing similar elements unless they're non-human. That's interesting. I assume it has to do with, like you were saying, polygons and what you could really do with that at the time. But in terms of all of these details, I can't imagine are actually in the character in the game, are they?
Not really, no.
Okay.
These details are mostly edited out in the polygons.
Yeah, that leg brace or halter or whatever you would call it, and the one leg that has fishnets, I don't see why you would include that in the design.
Yeah.
Unless it has a specific, like a holster for her weapon or something like that, because it just seems so odd. And then with asymmetry, like we were talking about earlier, you tend to do something on one side where you're doing this big arm, and then the other side is where you want to put the element with the fishnet, because if you put everything on one side like they're doing here, you create too much weight on that side and it unbalances the different proportions of the character. I get that they're doing like this weapon that kind of counterbalances it here, but unless she's always holding it in that hand, it's going to feel odd that the left side's so much heavier than the right.
I don't remember noticing that stuff on her leg until I was pulling up the designs for this conversation.
And is her ranged attacks like throws that kind of like a boomerang?
She can just whack you with it or throw it. She is fast.
Out of all of these, which is your favorite design?
I actually really like Rufus, just because I think it's really easy to tell what kind of person he is right away.
Yeah, so he's just like straight up jackass, kind of push you around guy.
Yeah.
I'd love to see like somebody cosplay this one, because just in terms of proportions and the design of the clothes themselves, I think it'd be really cool to see it in real life.
Other than this number 8 and number 9, they're all heroes. Number 11 and number 12 are optional characters that you have to go through some extra stuff to be able to recruit. They were supposed to be required characters, but they sort of ran out of time when they were creating the game. You have to go through some extra stuff to recruit them, and they're like 1 or 2 little pieces of extra information about them, but they're not super strong in the game. They're just kind of there. So I wonder if that's why their designs feel so different from everybody else's, because with them not being required characters in the game, I wonder if there just wasn't as much time spent on the design, didn't go through as many drafts.
Or it could just be that they did it at a later time and it's like you're in a different space whenever you design, and that pulls different ideas together.
Right,
Still
well,
can't get over the cat and that weird demon robot.
I think the cat itself is a really cute design.
Oh, definitely, yeah. But then you've got like spiky underboobs on the demon robot.
Yeah, I think it's just supposed to be furry, but yeah. All right, well, that's all that I had.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. It was fun. I hope we can do this again for another game at some point.
Yeah, and hopefully I didn't like upset anybody with their favorite characters.
Nah, I'm sure it's fine. Thanks for watching. Again, please like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you feel like it. Up here is another video that YouTube thinks you might like, so check that out. Down here is a playlist of other videos about video games, so check that out if you want to see more. That should be about it. Maintain your groovy selves.